This podcast is brought to you by Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine for those that love to make and drink great beer. Learn more online or subscribe at beerandbrewing.com or find us on social media at Craft Beer Brew. Welcome to the Craft Beer and Brewing Podcast. I'm your host, co-founder, and editorial director of Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine, Jamie Bogner. My guest on the podcast today is Keigan Knee of Modist Brewing in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Welcome to the podcast, Keigan.
Thanks for having me.
We were up in your spot last night, enjoying some beers here for your 4th anniversary, and I think I had one of the best hazy pale ales that I've had at least this year, and maybe in the last couple years. And so, thanks for agreeing to talk to me this morning, waking up bright and early on a Saturday morning to talk about brewing in a dark but not too cold brew house here in Minnesota.
No problem. My pleasure.
Let's talk about your unique ways of brewing here. But first, as the brewing industry's premier choice for glycol chilling, G&D Chillers has set the standard on quality, service, reliability, and dedication to their customers' craft. For 25 years, G&D has led the way on innovative solutions that match their brewing customers' immediate and future needs. G&D backs every project they touch and provides service second to none. Contact G&D Chillers today for your chiller sizing needs at 1-800-555-0973 or reach out online at gdchillers.com. Also, the founders of SS Brewtech started with a very clear goal to advance brewing equipment design, performance, and quality to the very highest standards in the industry. The SS Brewtech team draws upon strong functional backgrounds in brewing science, mechanical engineering, industrial design, supply chain, and manufacturing. SS Brewtech has the people and skill sets you want and expect from your supplier of pro brewing equipment. Head over to ssbrewtech.com for more information on their brew houses and brewing gear. All right, Keigan, let's talk about brewing. You've got an incredibly interesting approach, and one that, because you've built this entire brew house around a mash filter. It's not a typically common sight in brew houses, and I've been really fascinated with how you make beer with the kind of incredibly high protein grist bills. So first, before we get into that, talk to me about your arc in brewing and how you got to where you are right now, and then what has led you to pursue this style of brewing.
Sure. Well, let's see. It's been about 9 years, going on 10, in my professional brewing career. I was very fortunate to learn home brewing and professional brewing at the same time. I just fell into it and helped out a little startup brewery in South Minneapolis that is unfortunately no longer around, but it was all German lagers and Belgian beers. So like double decoctions, top cropping, everything right off the bat. Like I was super green and they gave me a chance and I just gave them everything I had and was with them for 2.5 years, became like their lead brewer. Then I decided to move out of there and go to help start up my close family friends' Dangerous Man Brewing Company with Rob and Sarah Miller. I was their head brewer for 3.5 years. Made awesome waves in the community there. Really got to get creative. Rob and I and the whole crew there just fit super well. And when Modist started to become real, we went for it. We wanted to get the experience. The 2 other owners, John Donnelly and Cale Anderson, and we all come with awesome backgrounds, but at the same time, we really wanted to get experience and really know what we're doing. Not just make good beer, but how to run the business, how to fix stuff, how to buy the right equipment, and we just nerd out on all that. So. That's like my super brief background. I could probably talk to you about it for like 2 hours, so I'll do the short version.
Sure. So when you moved from Dangerous Man, which was a more traditional brew system, and we're thinking about how you're going to launch at Modist, what brought you to this much more unique mash filter based system?
I literally had a book. The Master Brewers Association, like Bible. It's like 1992, like thick beast, and it was gifted to me. and I was going through it, just learning everything I could. And under lautering, there's mash filter, and I'm like, what the hell is this? I don't know, never heard of it. And read the whole chapter on it, and I'm like, why the fuck don't people have these more? This sounds amazing.
Sure.
And so
super common in like large scale, massive, macro commercial kind of brewing, right?
Yeah, the more I looked into it, it's Mira. Mira has been making them for over 125 years.
Yeah.
And they're all this little, not little, but come from Belgium, and they're just all about efficiency and high quality and just innovation. Over 25% of the world's beer, when I learned this, was made on a Mira mash filter. So they're very common, but yes,
right.
Like I said, very large scale. So after more digging, they didn't make anything small enough for the craft market. So it just kind of sat in the back of my head for years and years and years. When Modist became more of a reality, I wanted to take another look into that. So we looked into it. We could buy the mash filter, but we need to find a brew house manufacturer to help us pair it.
Right, because it doesn't exist. It's not great just on its own. It needs to be integrated into a whole system built around it.
Yeah, Mira makes a huge array of insanely cool brew house equipment. Their website's insane. But we stumbled upon Ager. They're a brewer house manufacturer. They're in Wisconsin, small, but they're awesome. They worked with us to basically make a really high efficient, very flexible on the creative end brew house, and it worked out. And a little more, cash up front, but it's so worth the efficiency and the creativity. And we learned all about the bonuses. We think of it that way, as the efficiency and being really conscious with our ingredients and our utilities. But at the end of the day, it's that creativity we were just all about.
Walk me and walk us through this kind of the basic process and how your brew process differs from a more traditional brew house.
Sure. So we start with grain like anyone else. We put it into a hopper. The hopper carries it into a hammer mill. So that's where our brew house gets very different right away. Goes into a hammer mill, and it's basically like a food processor, but on its side. And there's a sieve in there, just like sifting flour, and it literally is pulverizing whole grain into flour. It gets sucked into by a vacuum into a grist case, and then it augers that flour into our mash tun. And then we're mashing it just like everyone else, but now we're mashing with flour, and water to grain ratios are extremely different. pH efficiency is very different. Dough balls are a real thing, but we got really good and did some tuning, how to do it, how to not to do it. Dough balls can definitely ruin your life, or your day. Then after that, we're mashing like anyone else. Step infusion mashing, we can do decoction mashing if we want. Then after everything's converted, we mash out, and push over the mash filter. Now this gets a little complex, do my best, but basically the mash filter compared to a lauter tun is like comparing a drip coffee filter to a French press. So a lauter tun would be a drip coffee filter, mash filter, French press. So basically we're pushing in all of our mash, our flour mash, into the mash filter, and there's 45 plates vertically in this thing, and the mash is getting filled. Every plate holds 11 kilograms of mash, and they're all being filled at the same time, and they're all kind of like an individual lauter tun, like an individual false bottom. This is all happening vertically, so it's really weird to like wrap your head around it at first. So it's filling, it's catching all that flour, and then all the wort is passing through the very top of it and going into our kettle. We judge everything off flow rate and pump speed, but you're pumping it all through, and it's just catching all that flour. That'll become our spent grain. After all your mash is in, then we actually compress it. So these every plate has their own diaphragm, and they inflate with air, and they gently push out the remaining wort out of the grain. Then after that, the diaphragms release, the air comes out, and now the sparge water comes in the same pathway all the mash did, and then it pushes the air out of the diaphragms, making a cavity so that the sparge water can rinse through the grain, and then we're just watching runoff just like any other brewer. And then once all our runoff's down, we get down to like 2 Plato, we cut it, we press it again, press out every drop of wort we can, and we cut it, and we're all in the kettle. We're mostly diluted at that point. And then we do a little drain, and then we put grain bins underneath it, spread apart the mash filter plates, and they just drop down like the size of like stop signs and like 2 inches thick of grain, and you can like pick it up and break it. It's really dry.
Yeah.
It's really cool, easy to handle, doesn't like, I don't know, it's really less mess. But then we're at kettle fill, and you're like basically the whole process, you're basically getting all your first wort, like everything right away. Like we'll get 300 plus gallons of first wort, just like super strong sugar, which is really cool. It's really really nice to do like high gravity beers. If we want to just like keep stacking on first worts and boil them down and make huge stouts or barley wines or whatever, it's really awesome. From that process, it's pretty much the same. We're boiling, we're pushing over to the whirlpool, oxygenating, knocking out. But yeah, not only with this system, not only is the mash filter extremely efficient with its all surface area, it's also all the utilities and how we boil and how everything's insulated and there's so many efficiencies I could talk for days about in this system. It's literally like the biggest like high-tech efficiency brew house smashed into a tiny craft size, and it's awesome.
And there are a small number of brewers, craft brewers in America that are using these systems now, and I know we've written about Brewery West. It has a similar system, but you're talking about dozens maybe at this point. Not a large number. What are the drawbacks? And then from there, let's talk about what a system like this allows you to do.
Sure. I think we were number 6 or number 7 in the U.S. With a mash filter of this size. So like Alaskan Brewing Company has a mash filter. It's giant. It's really big. It's like 3 times size of ours, but they're a much bigger brewery.
Efficiency really matters when you're up there in Alaska and have to barge in all of your ingredients.
Yeah, barging them in, but then also shipping them out because there's only so many farms up there or cattle. Yeah. So, but yeah, we're like number 6 or 7, and which is great. But we're taking a risk on a newer chunk of equipment that a lot of people don't know how to use in the craft industry. But those few people we've been talking to, Brewery West guys, Tennessee Brew Works, they had the first. Yeah. We just reach out to them and ask questions, and we help R&D stuff for each other, and it worked out really well. But as for what we like what we want to do and what we have done so far with like different grains.
Yeah, I'm blown away because I'm drinking a beer right now that's a hazy pale ale, and you're brewing hazy beers with no barley in them. Yeah, with all high protein malts, which is kind of nuts. I mean, it's just something that other brewers can't really do because systems would just not support that kind of thing.
Exactly. It's it's really fun. We brew with a lot of wheat here. Yeah. A lot of oats, rye, spelt, you name it. And everything works. Some grains are still a pain in the ass. Rye is still a pain in the ass, even on a mash filter. Yeah. We can use a lot more. We've gone to 65% rye. We do an imperial stout. That's imperial rye stout. That's like 63 or 65% rye. It's just so viscous. It's not even like the beta glucans. It's not even like the protein as much. It's just the sugar is so thick. It's crazy. It comes out like maple syrup. It's crazy.
So how do you then start to conceive of beers using a say 70% wheat, 30% oats grist bill?
I don't know. We kind of just fell into it. We wanted to really explore the New England style IPA. When we start catching wind of it, and we wanted to do it our own way, and we're like, well, fuck it, let's do 100% wheat. And so we loaded up with 100% wheat, and it worked really well. And we're like, this is awesome. Like, this is a true wheat beer, like full out. And then we found out that, Dan Carey was right. The more the more wheat protein you have in suspension, it'll eventually flock out. And so we had to fix that. So we cut it with about 30% oats, and some biotransformation in there as well helps out. But we had a nice stable haze for months and months. We haven't had it flock out. But now you have this whole nother animal. Like, you have it's wheat and oat alcohol, and that has its own flavor, and it contributes its own perceptions and experiences. And hitting that with a ton of hops. And we use a lot of Denali and Citra in this beer I'm talking about. It's called Dream Yard. It's our IPA. And Denali's newcomer on the field, and we loved it right away. But it's just how it all melds together. It's just this really nice beer, and ever since we debuted it, we haven't been able to stop making it. So I'm cool with that.
That's fun. Let's talk about ingredients a little bit more in a sec. But on that note, great beers are made from select ingredients. With BSG, you'll bring the world to your brew house with an unparalleled and diverse selection of ingredients from across the globe to just down the road. Their dedicated customer service team and industry experience provides you with the assistance you need every step of the way. Let BSG be your supplier of choice for products essential to making great artisanal beverages so that you can stay focused on your craft. For more information, visit them at bsgcraftbrewing.com or call 1-800-374-2739. Also, this episode is brought to you by craftbeer.com, whose mission is to tell the stories behind America's small and independent breweries and the cities and businesses that support them. So, you started talking about ingredients. Let's talk about that a little bit more.
Sure.
Another thing, as we were talking last night, that you grew incredibly passionate about, which I haven't heard brewers as excited about, was your malt. Everyone talks about hops being this kind of driver, in the beer process, and especially in the hoppy beer process. But for you, you seem very fixated on malt quality and malt origin as you're designing your hoppy beers, and tracing some of the impacts of those different types of malts on those. Talk to me a little bit about your perspective on that.
Sure. Since we see such high efficiency all the time with the mash filter, and that comes from not only the maltster but also how we add it into the process, and just working with it and getting to know these malts where you come to rely on that efficiency and that speed of the brew house, that you can swap out a oat malt or a wheat malt and be like noticeably different. Like, wow, this took a half hour longer and I got 15% less extract. Like, it's not all about like the gains or efficiency, but
right.
It's flavor first, as far as I'm concerned. But that just sucks. So if we can find a better malt, higher quality, or just even the quality's all the same, it's just how their individual malting process, which I don't know,
Right.
But I'd like to learn more and talk to these maltsters more. But you can just tell that they do more modification to their malts, longer beta gluten rests, longer protein rests, whatever have you, and it shows up. And those are the malts we keep going back to because their flavor's intense and their efficiency is great. But yeah, it's there's a lot of different.
What are those malts for you?
We use a lot of BSG white wheat malt.
Okay.
A lot. The malted white wheat. We've tried the flaked. We've done the flaked. It's great.
Yeah.
But you can't beat a malted. I mean, for efficiency and speed,
Yeah.
you can't beat a malted. As far as our experience, at least with a mash filter, we use a lot of raw white wheat. Right here in Shakopee, Minnesota. What's up? We use a lot of Thomas Fawcett oats. We use a lot of Chilean barley. In the beers we do mix barley in. We really like using this Chilean extra pale ale barley we get from BSG as well. We use it in that pale ale.
What is it about that Chilean malt that you love so much?
Well, I mean, for how like fancy it sounds,
Yeah.
it's like a cent or two more a pound, which is nice.
Yeah.
But it's so pale. It's ridiculously called the SRM Lovibond on. It's really light,
Yeah.
and that's what we wanted for the pale ale. We wanted to be very distinctive in color to our IPA. Our IPA is more orange. We wanted so color, but then also it just has this really nice, smooth flavor. And it's really efficient. I think the maltsters at Patagonia, they really care what they're doing.
Yeah.
And that kind of led to the whole thing. I got in as much as like a pallet in, and then like I needed to get more and more. So the fine folks, Sherry at BSG, hooked it up, and we have a constant supply of it now. Used to be harder to get, but more and more local brewers are discovering it. I've been chatting about it.
Proselytizing,
I'm just hustling it. It's good stuff. But then you find out like I start playing with the roasted malts, and I don't know what it is they're doing over there, but their roasted malts are fantastic. You can use so much of them in a beer, and you don't get any like that weird soy saucy flavor and big imperial stouts, and it's just so smooth. I don't know what their secrets are, but I'm a big fan. It's really fun to play with new malts constantly, because now that since our mindset's in the mash filter, like we can make any grist combination we want. What is all out there? So we're always playing with the new malts all the time, and just playing around. We've set ourselves up tank space wise and equipment wise, and just business model wise. We do our 3 flagships. They go out in cans into draft accounts, but everything else we do is one-offs or old favorites and just constant experimentation, whether it's with malt or hops or just anything. So that wide creativity, we want all the different malts we can possibly get. It's really fun. We've been, what's the new one we're stoked about? We brewed it twice now. It's Wireman makes it. Or Clea, it's that newer Italian grown Pilsner malt. It's awesome. We've been doing foeder Pilsners we have 2 oak foeders, and we like doing slow lagers in them. So we've been taking that Clea malt and make it in that Peroni kind of Pivo Pils area style, and ferment it on oak the whole time with our house yeast strain, our house lager strain. And then just hang out. We ferment it really cold, and just a nice slow fermentation. Takes about 5 to 6 weeks of primary, and then we lager it, transfer it off wood, spun it, carb it. We're gonna do a light dry hop on this one, and they're awesome. And the locals have been appreciating. They're starting to fall in love with oak fermented pilsners, but then it's also cool because we like to do a lot of single malts. So this one coming up is just all Clea malt. So you almost get, last time we did, we kind of get like this nice like almond flavor from it, like a slight almond maltiness, and it's really fun. Like I don't know, just getting to know malt is just so important. And you can ask my girlfriend. She's always like, you're always smelling things and nibbling and tasting things. I'm like, I don't know, it makes my palate better. And I'm like, she's like, it's just super weird. You're just smelling the weirdest things all the time. I'm like, well, I got descriptors. I know what that's going to taste like.
No, I hear you. And I find myself doing that same kind of thing. Like I'm outside and a certain scent comes through the air, and like I got to file that one away because I'm familiar with that same exact scent in beer. And you look for the surroundings and figure out what you'd articulate as causing that and how you might describe that later on. It's you're building that library that you come back to, to dig into. From that perspective, like what, from your experimentation and your constantly new beers, what interesting things have you found in terms of, flavor impacts of some of these new ingredients, that might be exciting you?
There's a lot to talk about. It's cool because like it brings up this kind of just reminds me, like, just because we can make a wort out of a certain malt doesn't mean it's going to be awesome. But at the same time, or it will be awesome, but when it's fermented, it's different. But there's so many different crazy like how much wheat malt we've used, and then just switching between white wheat and red wheat, and it's pretty cool because like white wheat is made usually for like cakes and pastries and stuff. red wheat's more like pretzels and crackers, and so there's a slight difference in color, but the flavor is just bolder, and just be able to like really dial that in and really like take note of that. It's pretty cool to use that in a recipe. But I don't know. I get to just trust. I get to trust what the maltsters are going for.
Yeah.
And then kind of, just see if that's true. They're like, oh, try this. It's got this nice almond flavor and toast and blah blah blah. And it's like, cool. I'm gonna let's see if we can do that. And majority of the time it comes out. But I don't know. It's hard to explain. There's so many different combinations, but we found with like oats, like we've played with so many different types of oats, and that the pale ale you're drinking, our false pattern pale ale, it's our oat pale ale, and it's great. But there's some oat malts we wouldn't use because they're just like they're not efficient, but B, they get like this funk to them.
Okay.
And it's good, but the higher amounts of oats we've found is like it's great, but if you put in a lighter beer, it starts getting like this rustic funk, and it's like it's great, but not what I want in a New England style IPA.
Yeah.
And so,
or maybe not something at that lower ABV where it has to balance at a more delicate kind of level.
Exactly. Like if like the richer the beer is, like we put in a triple IPA, maybe it tastes different, but I think that flavor, just knowing that malt and what it can do in that percentage, awesome for like a saison or like a Belgian farmhouse or something like that, where you can just really play off those flavors.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about hops. I know it's not your favorite subject, but it's certainly
like
one
hops.
there.
I mean, I like a lot of. I just wish malt.
You make
was
a lot of
cooler.
hoppy beers.
Make a lot of hoppy beers. I'm trying to make malt cool again.
Yeah.
And it's cool, and we're people are nerding out about it, but hops are reign supreme, and it's gonna be like that for quite a while. But yeah, hops. We like here at Modist, we really take huge pride in our ingredients, but also our morals with we only use real ingredients. We're not gonna fake it. We're not gonna use artificial flavorings or natural flavorings or whatever.
Right.
If you want to put chocolate in that beer, put a bunch of fucking chocolate in it. Put a bunch of cocoa nibs and cocoa powder. That's how you're gonna get the best tastes, best flavors. But when it comes to hops, like we're serious about it, and we were fortunate enough to be able to go out to Yakima last year for the first time.
Yeah.
And go to hop selection, and I'm a big fan of investing in innovation and seeing what we can do with it. And if it's a new ingredient or even a new process of ingredient, it just like snowballs into so many different options.
Talk to me a little bit. You talk about innovation right there, and we're probably going to end up in that conversation about cryo hops. I noticed in your hop bills that you are building layers and layers of hops, sometimes using both T90 pellets and cryo hops of the same hop variety in the same beer in order to do different things at different points. Talk to me about how you visualize and structure some of those and what you get out of some of these mixes and some of these various ratios of these combinations.
Definitely. We do a lot. Since we do a lot of one-off beers, a lot of different hoppy beers, the combinations and process are endless, and I like to get the most.
Maybe we narrow that down into a couple of things that you may have learned more specifically.
Sure. I really like using cryo. We've been doing it lately where you play around with it on the hot side.
Okay.
And you're just like, really, it's all about getting that oil content into the wort.
Okay.
And without, losing aromatics or anything. So we do it's not even like it's a lot, but it's this heavy oil content. I'm sure you could get a similar thing with, if you just use like, hop oil, just straight hop oil. Yeah. But we've been doing the cryo, in the cold side or in the hot side, and then like nothing at all in the boil, just bit at the end, like a good chunk at the end of cryo, and then knock it out and ferment on it, and like the next day it just smells amazing. And a lot of that's going to be like your aromatics scrubbing out from CO2, but after that dies down, like the hop presence that's in that beer and the biotransformation that's going on, it's just crazy. We just did one with Dangerous Man, and it tasted like guava and peach juice, and I'm like, not like, oh, it reminds me of, it like tasted like I put fucking juice in there. and it was nuts, and I was like, this is crazy, like this is really cool. But like doing that instead of like, oh, putting in a bunch of hops right away, like in day 2, fermentation, I don't know, there's something, it's just a different, I don't know, it's crazy. We're still discovering it, we're still playing around with it.
How do you kind of balance the hops between the whirlpool and the dry hop, ratio wise?
We're doing probably 1 pound to 2 pounds per barrel, playing with that, with cryo and T90 in the whirlpool.
Yeah.
And then we're hitting it in the dry hop. We'll hit it like another time with cryo, and then let it hang out. And then towards the end, a couple of Play-Doh away from final gravity, we'll hit it with the rest of the dry hop load, and then that'll be more of the T90s and whatever's left over of the cryo. So we basically take our whole dry hop bill and put them in at certain degrees Play-Doh during the fermentation, and then also the whirlpool, just to maximize that oil content. You want to get the flavor from the oil, but then you want to hit it at the very end to bring back that aroma, because you're going to get some scrubbing.
Right.
But another thing like we do is we dry hop under pressure with a hop, one of the, I call it the hop nick, but it's like a dry hop cart.
Yeah.
It grinds it up, puts it in, so keep our DO extremely low.
We got a shearing pump? Or?
Yep. Yeah, it's a shear pump. It works really good. We get it all in the top. It's awesome for safety as well. But at the same time, then before we even dry hopping, we'll get like the second one in, and then we'll spund it. So we'll just get as much natural carbonation as possible. I think that's a huge thing with retaining aroma, but also that mouthfeel, smaller bubble from the yeast versus a carbonation stone. And then we'll take the spunding valve off, do the last dry hop, put it back on, and let it hang out, crashing it, centrifuging it, carb it up, run it. We try to get them out, we're not rushing the beers by any means, but when they're ready and they pass all the VDK tests, diacetyl tests, all that, they're good to go. We want them fresh. The aroma is the first thing that's going to leave that beer. So we're doing a lot of different ratios. We've played around like 100% cryo. I've done that before. Not a huge fan of that. It's
really?
Like one note, like a single note of like Citra, and it's just kind of watery, which is weird because there's so much oil in these hops. Something to do with the vegetal matter. You need it. So right now we're doing about 50-50 and playing around there. We're really happy with that, because when they tell you about cryo hops, it's like, oh, they're 50% potent. They're twice as potent, right? And I think that's on a sliding scale for sure, probably anywhere from 35 to maybe 50, maybe even 55. But you never know unless it's just going to be experience. So we've been playing with that, and major differences. You'd like to use 100% cryo for efficiency and yield, but it's not going to taste the best.
Okay. Are there cryo differences depending on the hop variety that you're using?
Yeah.
You think the effects of cryo may be more pronounced in certain varieties more than others?
Yeah, definitely. We found Citra is just a heavy hitter all the time.
Yeah.
Mosaic is great, but it's way better with blending in our experience, and I like using it in the whirlpool more than dry hopping. Those big deep fruit flavors come out way more, and we've like, with all of my experience, different hops, like to get those oils out and what you want out of those oils, it's not just like, oh, throw it in the dry hop. Like, that works to a certain extent, but we were doing it with Huell Melon, that Steiner hop, and it's like big honeydew. If you put it, we were like dry hopping a beer with it, we're like, oh, that's great. But we found like just putting in the hot side with half the poundage, it got way more aromatic, and even survived through the whole fermentation of even like the scrubbing of the CO2. And we didn't even dry hop that beer anymore. So it's like, you got to learn the hop, just like people talk about like Galaxy, like it can get really intense and then it's not pleasant, and you got to like let it chill out for a while. Every hop is different, but definitely the different cryos, they're doing all new types of things now. Like it's a lot. just between the hot side, cold side. But I would definitely Mosaic sticks out as something that's I'd rather shove that on the hotter side or earlier in the process versus at the end. Just get better flavors out of it.
Makes sense. How do you experience any like post dry hop re-fermentation, hop creep, or does that how's that impact what you guys do?
We have been very fortunate. We have seen little to none. I don't think we've ever seen much hop creep at all. We have a good little library here for QA/QC, and we've been checking pH and checking gravity, and they haven't moved, which is really nice. And I don't know if it's our under pressure process or if it's just our yeast and our hop combinations. Certain hops do have a lot more concentrated enzymes to do the hop creep. But one thing we're thinking about now is, can you get hop creep from putting massive amounts in the whirlpool, especially if you're chilling down your whirlpool temperature? Like, what do those enzymes look like at that temperature? And can you get hop creep from the hot side? I don't know yet. Maybe.
Wouldn't that be actually, just aiding fermentation by, initial primary fermentation at that point?
It would help, but it's also going to factor into that target final gravity you want to hit. So I don't know.
So in some ways, you're adding in an indirect way, you're adding those amylase enzymes into your fermentation process by adding that many hops on your whirlpool side.
Yeah, I mean, that's something we were just kind of talking about the other day, and I think it could be possible if their whirlpool temps are low enough. But I like to think that if you're up in the 160 plus realm, it's got to be dying off. I don't know, maybe.
Where do you tend to whirlpool?
We've been doing, depends on the recipe. Some Dream Yard's harder to chill down with our setup than like False Pattern is, just from gravity wise. But yeah, we're going anywhere between 160 and 185, right in there, with great results. It's hot enough where I feel confident that there's nothing, I'm not adding anything that would spoil the wort, but at the same time it's cold enough that I don't think we're definitely seeing a huge aromatic and just like flavor depth develop in these beers, and that's what we're really geeking out on the last couple of months.
Yeah, that's interesting. Let's talk about some other styles of beer that you like. You tend to be on trend with a full range of fruited adjuncted beers, especially here it's your anniversary weekend where you've got a full tap lineup of some creative stuff. What are some other projects that you've been working on with some different kinds of ingredients that have kind of stretched you out as a brewer?
We did that fruit beer that was crazy. I've never put that much fruit in a beer before.
Yeah.
We did about 2,000 pounds of puree into like a 20 barrel batch, and like it was a lot. But at the same time, like it's you're making a fruit beer. It tastes like a smoothie. It's good. We want to do something. We always like to do something crazy we haven't done before for our anniversaries.
How do you, managing that much fruit into a tank, has to have its own kind of process considerations. How do you kind of maximize, flavor extraction, from a fruit with that kind of volume in it?
High quality.
Yeah.
High quality fruit, it starts for sure.
Aseptic puree.
Yep, aseptic puree. We pump it out with a diaphragm pump, which is amazing. Oh my God, that is so cool.
Yeah.
You just basically a big old straw and suck it out of the drum, and it's amazing. We just like kind of went for it right now. We're trying to keep it where we don't want this like really dry, where all the fruit is. We want the fruit fermented out, but we don't want to lose that fruit flavor. So we're brewing them more on the sweeter side. We've played around with a little bit of lactose in this one, because you don't want things to explode.
Right.
We're not canning these. It's on draft, but the goal is to have a shelf stable product always. I don't want
So you're adjusting your mash then to leave more unfermentable sugar in there?
A little more unfermentable sugar, because you want to, I mean, if you're fermenting all the fruit out,
right.
I mean, fruit
and
is
that
sugar.
will just straight ferment,
Yeah, so if you take a fruit and juice it and measure the sugar content, that's what you're going to need to make it taste like that, unless it's like super concentrated or whatever. But you want to get in that realm, and
you do that. You actually measure with the fruit juice what the sugar levels are of that fruit juice.
It's a little harder with like purees, but you can filter out a lot of the pectin and the fruit matter, and just get a couple drips and figure it out. And just that's a good ballpark, because like if you want it to taste like fruit, it's got to have sugar in it, because fruit is sugar. So so a little on the sweeter side.
I love that idea of measuring the gravity of the actual fruit juice and trying to at least get your finished beer in a similar gravity place, so that level of sweetness is familiar to somebody drinking it.
A lot of these really, a lot of top shelf grocery stores do it.
Okay.
They'll just go and they'll get their batch of grapefruit, and then they'll put a little refractometer on there and check it out and be like, this is high quality. It's got a higher quality sugar content. Like that's how a lot of people buy their fruits. Just how good is it? And it's one little way for quality control, I guess.
No one I know buys their fruit with a refractometer and checking the gravity. But
I'm not saying I do.
You apparently have cooler friends than I do.
No, my good buddy, he used to run a grocery store, and that was part of his duty. Like this lot came in, if it's low, shouldn't be paying for that. I want top shelf product. I don't know. It was interesting. I don't know why I remember that.
That's it, man. That's curious. Any other projects that you've delved into in your experimentation that you've learned something interesting from lately?
I'm really liking. We're playing more and more with the pastry stouts, the dessert stout realm, but we're always doing our own thing on it. Yeah. Ours are like weeded. Technically weeded imperial stouts. I think we're working on a really nice base, and it's been coming out fantastic. And I think it's like 40+% wheat. It's just so efficient, but it's so soft, and the alcohol is so like smooth, and you don't have to worry about like foam. Like we can actually get foam on our imperial stouts, even with all the adjuncts in it. Granted, we've only done a handful, but you use that much wheat, you can get this nice foam on there. Yeah. But at the same time, we've been playing around a lot of different adjuncts. A lot of the stuff we do is not only ingredients, but just process. Like we can just how we use vanilla beans versus the dude down the road. Just playing around with a lot of different, just maximizing your ingredients, and always doing new combinations. Like.
That's a nice broad statement, but what have you learned from specific ways of treating these things?
I've learned that you really want to, if you're going to be making beer and say that, hey, this is what you want. Like this is the flavor I'm going for. You better hit it hard and be able to like just knowing. I keep saying, but knowing your ingredients, like we're hand roasting all of our own nuts and everything for our stouts, and that makes a huge difference. So like learning every ingredient, it's huge. When to put them in the process, what not to do in the process. Oh, we should have put that in a nylon bag next time. Definitely learned that the perception of beer. I think this is a cool one. Perception of beer is constantly changing, but then teaching people that the beer does not necessarily have to come across as like, oh, you think that's sweet, but it's actually like really not. Like we made this cream ale that was like tons of like vanilla and lactose in it, and people were like, oh, this is so good, so refreshing, and but it's so sweet. But then you measure it, and it's like dry as hell. And I don't know, I just really get stuck, like hung up on like tons of different like process and ingredient things, and that makes sense that
the psychology of taste doesn't necessarily ride 1-to-1 with what you can measure out of it. That especially when you're talking about all the ingredients that we taste have their own memories for us. And so, if you taste something like vanilla, you're almost always tasting it with sweetness attached to it. And your brain can fill in the difference there. It assumes things are going to be a little sweeter than they are just because it has that association with it. And so, how does that that psychology impact the way that you then design some of these beers in order, you don't have to make it as sweet because it'll just be perceived that sweet.
Yeah, it's knowing that ingredient. Like if you chew on a vanilla bean, it's bitter.
Yeah.
But it's perceived sweet. So like we just loaded it with a ton of vanilla beans and a little bit of milk sugar. And milk sugar's not even that sweet. It's more of a texture thing. Like eat a spoonful of it. It's terrible. I mean, it doesn't taste like much. And I've done it.
Gross.
Yeah, it's. But yeah, like that is huge. Like, just getting those flavors of the crop and messing with people's minds of what beer can be. And that is just like a little example of how we've done it. But it's also, are people open to it?
Yeah. On the complete opposite side of that, you mentioned earlier that you've loved this delving into foeder-based lagers. Tell me a little bit about your initial forays into that and what you've learned through the process of pulling foeders up and getting them to a process where they're ready for lagers and then making good lagers.
A lot of it's keeping it clean, big time, and just trusting the vessel, like big time is like learning it. We like washed them out first. It's just like a nice warm water, and then tasting the water that came out of it, and it's extremely woody. But it was crazy that because they're fresh, they weren't used before, and they're not charred on the inside. They're just toasted or kilned. And pulling the water out, it was so like woody, like you would expect, but it was nuts how much the wood character that oak gives to spirits. I was like, this, you could tell me like this was, like, there was whiskey in this glass. Like it was so crazy. But learning that and like
just from water, and it tasted like the wood itself made it taste like
it was like holy shit, like this is like 50% of what whiskey tastes like. And it was really cool. So like learning that, getting those prepped because they were so woody when they were fresh, and you don't want to overdo it. And I don't want to sit here. I didn't want to sit there and just like blend it with a bunch of beers to make it calm it down. So we like washed them out, hung out, put storage solution in them a little bit. We mixed that up so that there's no microbial growth. Then we drain that out when they're ready, and we're gonna fill it. We just use this product by Burco, and it's this awesome wood cleaner. And it creates, it's like powdered hydrogen peroxide, and I forget the other one. It's like potassium something. But basically when they combine, it makes this food-safe cleaner, foamy cleaner, and oxygen bleach. So it's kind of like OxyClean, but doesn't have all those surfactants and different like silicates in it, so that it doesn't get stuck in your wood. Cleans it extremely well, and sanitizing at the same time. We do that, do another hot water rinse, and then purge it out with CO2, and then we're knocking beer right into it and pitching like normal. But we like to, with the pills, we like to do like a slow pilsner. So we're actually fermenting the yeast, the lager yeast, a lot colder than it recommends. Like 44 degrees, 46 degrees, right in there. And it's scary at first because we're like, it's not gonna take off. Shit. But that beer was called Just You Wait. And it was just bloop, bloop, bloop for 6 weeks. And it came out super clean, super crisp. We would purge off the yeast every other week, just like get any we didn't want. Autolysis, keeping it really clean. And then our foeders actually have glycol plates in them. So chill them down. We just do a nice slow lager, like drop 5 degrees Fahrenheit, like every week, until you get down to like 40, and then after 40 it's not going to lager too much. The yeast is going to be really cold at that point, but we can bring it down. We got it down to like 35, and then transfer it over into stainless to get it fully off the yeast, and then any remaining yeast, let that naturally flock out for another week, carb it up, and then package it. And they're just just badass. And that wood character is so nice. The recipe design, we actually lay off the hops a little bit because you get a good dryness and tannic, like a nice pleasant tannic on the very end of the beer. And so we don't need to use as many hops. It's just all that balance of, it's really cool. It's like boom, Pilsner, lager in your face, on your palate. And then it just dries out. It's like this nice finish, this nice little woody character. And then you get your like hops in there as well. And just makes you want to keep drinking it, but it's not like ridiculously dry. It's that perception of being dry again. It's really fun. I don't know. We really like to blend old school tradition with modern crazy innovation.
Sure.
And this is one of the ones we did it. Like I just was like, let's buy foeders. They're sexy, and I don't think
they're cheaper than stainless.
They're a little bit cheaper, yeah. And it's fun. I don't know. And the same reason why we do cask beers. And it's just fun to marry old school tradition and innovation. I just love it.
Yeah, no, makes sense. So what's on the horizon? What's next for Modist? What's getting you excited, and what are you enthusiastic about pursuing right now?
I'm excited for this crazy 2 weeks of getting ready for our anniversary to be over. We've all been getting our ass kicked, but it's all good. Nothing but good stuff. Really excited to have more time, and because I have enough staff and just resources now to start doing more collabs, start getting our name out there more, and start sharing all this knowledge and with like-minded brewers. Just keep going on more of the on-trend beers. Just fun. They're fun and great at the end of the day, but the techniques and process is where it gets me. It's like it's so interesting. It's totally different how I learned making beer. But then also starting up our mixed culture program. We recently got a good chunk of wine barrels, so we're gonna ferment in our foeders. And then rack it off into our wine barrels, and then inoculate in there, re-ferment in there, and let them hang out, and just kind of go from there. I'm really excited to play around with that. I know my other brewers are as well. Really excited to keep just keep playing around with more wacky stuff. We have a lot of weird recipes of grain combinations that we really want to do. We've been really into honey lately, and agave and rice, and start making sours out of crazy grain combinations, whether they be a mixed culture or a kettle sour. I think it's really fun to do that. And just hopefully we'll run those to the tap room, and hopefully people are brave enough to try something new and learn a little bit at the same time.
Makes a lot of sense. We'll talk more in just 1 second, but before we get out of here, I want to say big thanks to the sponsors that made this episode possible. G&D Chillers leads the way on custom innovative solutions. SS Brewtech is advancing brewing equipment design, performance, and quality. Let BSG supply you with an unparalleled and diverse selection of ingredients. And craftbeer.com's mission is to tell the stories behind America's small and independent breweries. If people want to learn more about Modist, where do they find you guys, Keigan?
Definitely hit us up on modistbrewing.com, Modist Brewing on Instagram. That's where all the cool kids are at, I guess. Come by the tap room. We're right downtown Minneapolis, right by the Twins Stadium. Tap room's always flowing, man. You see me in the back, say hi.
Nice. Well, thanks for talking with me. If you enjoyed the podcast, I hope you subscribe on whatever platform that you're listening on. And if you enjoy the content that we bring you from Craft Beer and Brewing, go to beerandbrewing.com, click on the subscribe button, and become a subscriber to Craft Beer and Brewing magazine. We'll be back next week with another episode. But Keigan, thanks for joining me.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, cheers. This podcast is brought to you by Craft Beer and Brewing magazine for those that love to make and drink great beer. Learn more online or subscribe at beerandbrewing.com or find us on social media at Craft Beer Brew.